Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he seats himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being, and a mouth that spoke boastfully. Daniel chapter 7, verse 8. One of my most prominent memories from high school was when we briefly discussed the Bible in English class. We talked about the various characters found therein, as well as more than a few themes that can still be found in literature today. Examples include the jealousy or rivalry between brothers, as can be found between Cain and Abel, as well as Esau and Jacob. Another, of course, would be the struggle of great heroes against various enemies, such as the story of Samson and Delilah. There were quite a few more, but since most of you already know that I'm quite a fan of horror and monsters, I brought up the book of Revelation as a kind of forerunner for horrific monsters. My teacher, Mrs. Cruz, laughed at this in an amused way. She was quite impressed that I did as much research on the topic as I did. However, she told me that I was missing a point. When I asked what I had missed, her answer was that I was taking that part of the Bible too literally. She said that while the words of the Bible could be trusted, the writings of Revelations were metaphorical and dreamlike. Mrs. Cruz went on to say that the many monsters described in the book at the end of the Bible were very likely people, simply compared to various things so that the readers would see them for who they really are. She cited as an example the beast that came from the sea with its 7 heads and 10 horns. She told me that if she ever saw such a monster clamber up from the ocean and onto the land, she would run away from it faster than the wind. She would not bother to fully examine the thing or listen to what it had to say because of how terrifying such a creature would be in real life. Mrs. Cruz told me that the beast was probably a man whose soul is as ugly as the monster described in the good book. Revelation might be trying to describe a person who very likely looks normal, or possibly might even be quite beautiful. But the person they truly are within is hideous and monstrous to behold. After all, my English teacher said, most people are attracted to and would prefer to follow and obey those they consider beautiful and powerful, rather than those that look like abominable monsters. Hi, hello, and welcome again everybody to another episode of Natural Juan. This time around we're going to discuss top 3 Antichrist figures in fiction, from Randall Flagg in the works of Stephen King, to Griffith of Kentaro Miura's Berserk, to Damian Thorne from the Omen films. Before all that though, I'd like to invite you all to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell for more content like this. Special shout out too to Mr. Jonathan Green, a longtime supporter of this channel. Okay, so without further ado, let's begin this look into some of the darkest characters in fiction. Now we've already talked quite a bit about Randall Flagg from the works of Stephen King. He appears in a lot of Stephen King stories, sometimes overtly, such as in The Stand, The Eyes of the Dragon, and the Dark Tower series, and sometimes not, such as in The Children of the Corn, and The Long Walk. Almost always, though, Randall Flagg appears as a false messiah to many misguided characters in the works of Stephen King. Though you probably know this already from the previous video, Randall Flagg was originally just a man by the name of Walter Paddock. He was a resident of Delane, the kingdom featured in Eyes of the Dragon, who decided to go off on his own to find the truth of his parents. If one takes the canon of the comics, he's the son of the demonic wizard Merlin, who left him under the care of a miller so that he would learn more about the ways of ordinary people. Whatever the case, by the age of 13, he left to search for his parents, or at least find out who they were and what had happened to them. This, of course, led to him being waylaid by a bandit who proceeded to rob and sexually assault him. This would result in him becoming embittered and angry at the world. As he would discover more about himself and his true nature, he fully gave into evil willingly. In the end, he would become an enigmatic force that leads kingdoms and nations to their downfall and destruction. And, in some cases, such as in The Stand, he causes the death of a large percentage of humans on the planet. Randall Flagg is the mortal enemy of wandering gunslinger Roland Deschain, who can be seen as a not-so-pure messianic counterpart. The Man in Black is also shown to be working for John Farson, the founder and leader of a rebellion that led to the destruction of Gilead, the kingdom of the gunslingers in Midworld. There are even those who say that John Farson might actually be just another name or disguise that Flagg created as he walks the world, leading one world after another to complete destruction. Griffith, or Femto as he would later be known after becoming a member of the God Hand, is another example of a fictional Antichrist. We've also talked about him a bit in a previous video, one that features the other members of the God Hand, such as Void, Slan, Ubik, and Conrad. All in all, Griffith is a beautiful man, possessing remarkable skill, charisma, and beauty. Many, both characters in the story and people in real life, are often surprised that Griffith is male, since his flowing silvery hair and angelic face make him easily mistaken for a woman. That said, despite what his appearance may imply, many are aware that he may very well be one of the worst and most despicable characters in anime. I mean, sure, there's Light Yagami in Death Note and Tomie from the works of Junji Ito, but few can really match the utter bastardry the so-called Hawk is capable of. As you know, especially if you're a fan of Berserk, Griffith first started out as an ordinary child in the world of Berserk, perhaps a resident of one of the setting's many towns or cities. It is there he first encounters a merchant that sells to him the Crimson Bayolet, a supernatural artifact of demonic origin that can bestow upon its owner unimaginable power at a terrible, terrible price. Those who choose the tainted gift of a Bayolet must sacrifice someone they love in order to become a chosen of the God Hand, or, for lack of a better term, an apostle. After years of torture, being horribly disfigured, and injured beyond recovery, Griffith sacrifices the Band of the Hawk, the mercenary company that had fought for him for so many years, and without whom he would never even be able to reach any kind of prominence. Even before he became fully aware of the implications of the Crimson Bayolet, it is shown that he is rather dismissive of the people who fight for him. In what he thought was a private conversation with Princess Charlotte, Griffith reveals that he doesn't really consider the members of the Band of the Hawk as friends, or even human beings for that matter. He notes that he is indeed grateful for their loyalty and has come to trust their strength, but this is as far as his concern for them extends. One interpretation of his anger at Guts' departure from the Band of the Hawk was that it was less because his best friend was leaving, and more because he saw the other man as his property, and that thinking and leaving for himself wasn't what Griffith wanted him to do. At the very end, Griffith sacrificed the entire Band of the Hawk for his own ends. He even sexually assaulted the love interest of Guts to show the latter that the woman was his property and not the other man's. Of course, this is never obvious when Griffith appears to the people of Midland as the Hawk of Light. Last but not least is Damian Thorne of the Omen film franchise. The first film came out in 1976, starring Gregory Peck, and would go on to influence other horror films with a demonic theme, such as The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby. The film would prove so popular that even after completing a trilogy of films where the savior of mankind appears at the end, the film producers decided to make more movies, which more or less grated on the audience. Unlike the first two mentioned in this video, Damien harkens back to the Christian idea of the Antichrist, an evil person sired by the devil himself to mislead the nations of man to their own destruction. Of course, in the films proper, excluding the third one since he's all grown up there, he is depicted as just a child. The films and other media differ in how Damian Thorne came into being. In the original films, he is the offspring of a fallen angel and a jackal. The novelization of the films instead depicts the demonic boy as the product of sodomy and took root and gestated in the intestine rather than a proper womb. In the latest film, however, the young Antichrist is born from the pairing of a human woman and a jackal-headed demon. All theories are terrifying nonetheless. While certainly mostly depicted as a child, Damian Thorne is without doubt still extremely disturbing. For while he might not yet be a ruler of the world or a cruel tyrant who takes pleasure in the death of millions of people, he is still an active threat to the world at large, and more than a menace to the common man. There's his telekinetic abilities that allow him to move things with his mind, and the fact that he is always surrounded and served by loyal cultists, willing to take their own lives for him. So I'm sure some of you are asking, who would win should all three of these examples of fictional antichrists start fighting each other? Well, honestly speaking, I really don't know. But I'll tell you who I think won't win. Us. If evil beings came to this world and took over with false promises of hope and salvation, I'm sure a lot of us would fall victim to them. It both surprises and saddens me how so many people fall easy prey to cult leaders who are able to say what they want to hear, rather than what's actually true.